The copyright and online learning at a time of uncertainty episode where it says 80 on the slide. I'm about to share the slide, but it's actually episode 81.
It's 81.
So I feel the need to amend that before you see the actual slide. So, well, anyway, I'm Chris Morrison and
I'm Jane Secker, and we are your hosts for the copyright and online learning webinars. And we have some slides.
Screen sharing has failed to start. Please try again later, it says, which is an interesting conundrum, isn't it?
Would you like me to try screen sharing?
I think it might be an idea, given that we've got some slides that we want to present now. I've just saved this. I will try one more time, and if it doesn't work, I will let you. I think it's working.
Oh, there we are. It's working.
There we
Perfect.
go. Okay. Yeah. So here we are, Friday the 14th of November. It's the home run, isn't it? We're almost there at the end of the year. I don't think we want to start talking about the C word just yet, but maybe later on we'll be talking about seasonal things to come. Anyway, what are we talking about today?
So we're going to do some brief copyright news, our usual update of what's going on in the world of copyright and online stuff. And then the main event today is what we're calling the highlights of Icepops.
Oh. Okay, sorry about this. It went ahead too quickly. Is this all this gesturing on this fancy Mac nonsense? Okay, so apologies.
Get those slides back, Chris?
Are the slides back? Let me get the slides back. Here we go.
So highlights of webinar today, highlights of Icepops, sorry, today. We are very grateful to our 4 guests who've joined us. We had a few teething problems first thing, but we're all here, so that's fantastic. So really great to have 4 people who were speaking at Icepops in September. We've got Doug, we've got Anna, we've got Megan, we've got Diane, and we've got a pre-record from Sarah Brear from the CLA. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to tell you about what's coming up next at the end of the session, if you can hang around.
Yeah. So what have we been doing since we last met? So this is a photo from this week. And Jane, you very kindly came along to give me moral support when I was talking on this panel at the World Intellectual Property Review AI and IP Summit, which was in Monument up in London. So I was very pleased to be asked to be part of this. I think it has been recorded, so it might be interesting to see. Well, we will share, if we can, the recording that came from it. I was on a panel chaired by Don McCombie, who is a partner at Clifford Chance. I was joined there by Mark Cruikshank from NatWest, Leslie Landsman, who is part of the Icepops community, has come to Icepops. She's at Springer Nature, and not pictured there as well is Matt Harvey. So we were talking about copyright, the copyright conundrum, and AI. How do we solve it? And the good news is we just solved the whole thing. We sorted it all out. So when you do hear the recording, you will find that actually we've put the world to rights and we don't need to think about copyright and AI anymore. Or maybe we didn't. Either way, it was useful to have that conversation, and interesting to hear all about how IP lawyers and IP managers are looking at AI right across the whole of the loads of different sectors, and are the machines coming to replace lawyers?
Yeah, it was a really interesting panel discussion. So I was in the audience, and it was definitely the highlight of the day. And lots of people said, how fascinating it was, and there had been some recent case law, kind of some judgments, which we're going to talk about in a moment.
It's all coming up, yeah. But it turns out, from talking to those people, copyright is the most exciting of all the IP rights. Absolutely. It's the sexiest of all the IP rights. I think we had a general consensus. Yeah.
And I think they're scratching their head as much as we are in higher education around what to do around AI. So reassuring in some ways that corporate lawyers haven't sorted it all out for us.
Right.
So yes, just a quick reminder, we have our webinar and blog archive. So just a couple of days ago, I put up the link to webinar 80, which was the one from our colleagues at Coventry, Dal and Erica, talking about open educational resources. So that one's available now up on the YouTube channel and on our blog archive.
Yeah. So without further ado, let us wait for the jingle to load.
Copyright news, copyright news, copyright news, copyright copyright news, 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 copyright.
So there's a
Seamless,
few bits
Chris.
of It's seamless, isn't it? A few bits and pieces here. So this was one that came up on the panel discussion just recently in a judgment on the Getty Images and Stability AI case. So this is one that has been in the court of England and Wales. So it is a UK judgment, and Getty Images case against Stability AI failed, so it wasn't the case that that they were seen to be infringing copyright, but it's partly because of the nature of that case and how actually Getty needed to drop their charges of copyright or primary copyright infringement. And if you read through on this link, and there's an awful lot of stuff out there, this is and this is what we were saying on that panel. There is so much more to go in this story about those key questions around whether training models and whether operating generative AI models brings liability on the company that creates them and the users. So some interesting things, some indications, but by no means the end of the story, by any means.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And then we had another case, I think, also that's was literally just like the day before or the day of the event where you were speaking, Chris, which is
It was
in
on
the
Tuesday,
German courts, which is the German kind of equivalent of PRS for music, called
Yeah,
Gamer, I think.
Gamer, yes. So Gamer took action against OpenAI, and in the German court, it was found that the ChatGPT had memorized song lyrics, and therefore there was a liability, and there was copyright infringement. Again, OpenAI are considering whether they're going to appeal that judgment. Both parties did want to do a referral to the Court of Justice of the European Union, but in that case the court declined to do so. But it may be, again, as with most of these cases, there's a lot more road to go before we get a settled case law and a clear consensus. So it's interesting that we're getting results that on the face of it seem to be coming up with different answers to what appears to be the same question. But as with all legal action, these things are very fact specific. So each case needs to be considered on its own merits, and that's why it's kind of piecing together that puzzle. So interesting to see that development.
Yeah, and if you're kind of scratching your head and thinking, I'm never going to keep up with all this, I've got the next slide is a useful one, which I've picked up. I have signed up, and I'll tell you a bit more about this series on AI and copyright that is being run by some colleagues in the US. But I picked up this fantastic slide at the first event I went to, run by Ocean and the Authors Alliance, which is kind of keeping track, and I believe this is being updated, so you can kind of follow the link, and it'll be kind of added to in time, but it's kind of looking at all the different kind of cases, and where they are in which of the different courts. As we know, in the US, things there are lots of different circuits, and things are kind of going around, and trying to get your head around it is really complicated. So there's a graphic to just blow your mind slightly. But yeah, if you want to find out more about kind of the whole area, what I would recommend is these. I don't know if anyone else has signed up for them, but Ocean. So if we go to the next slide, Chris. Yeah, they are the Open Copyright Education Advisory Network, and they've been collaborating with the Authors Alliance, and they have their full series, which is focusing on artificial intelligence and copyright. So there's been one event so far, and there are some great discussions going on. So I've put in the link with the kind of save the date and stuff in there. I think you should be able to get through. I don't think you've missed the boat to register. I'm hoping not. But I've certainly I've signed up for these events, and the first one I found really fascinating. So yeah. Okay.
Okay, hold on a sec. My headphones have decided to turn themselves off, and my audio is now connected to the big loudspeaker. So I'm just readjusting my technology. It's too many things, all of which have the ability to connect to each other. I
But
think
we
we're
are on
back
to the
in the
main event, I think, now,
We
Chris.
are on to the main event. Yes, here we are.
So
Highlight
the highlights, I mean, these are the highlights of Icepops, surely. The
the
fact that the Gallagher brothers turned up and treated us was obviously something that people haven't stopped talking about since. The fact that we have such a fantastic Icepops organising committee, and here are some of our lovely committee with us who were registering people on the day, and of course the fact we were in the beautiful John Rylands library, and there's a picture of us upstairs in the kind of cathedral. We had hoped that the Gallaghers might go up there and have some pictures taken, didn't we? But I think they had to rush away,
I
sadly.
think they had to rush off and do something rock and roll.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there we
yeah.
go.
So, but I think now we are going to hand over to our speakers. So I think we're going to go over to Doug first. Doug McCarthy, a previous keynote also at Icepops when we were in Oxford a few years ago. And we're really grateful to you for joining us. And I will hand over to you now. If you can get your slides up, Doug, and tell us all about paradoxical patterns in the public domain.
I would love to. Good morning, everyone. Greetings from the Netherlands. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks, Chris and Jane, as always, for bringing us together. Hopefully you can see my first slide clearly now. Great, thanks for the thumbs up. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes. It's almost like a short story, and it's about art, copyright, and the public domain. If you're not familiar with me, I've been working in cultural heritage, digital collections, user engagement, and copyright as kind of a side dish for about 20 years now. Formerly a rights and images manager at the Royal Museums Greenwich. I spent 7 years at Europeana as a user engagement lead. I've worked in private art collections, major libraries here in the Netherlands, and I'm now the senior open content specialist at the think tank Open Future. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to talk about sunflowers, sort of a bright motif for a very grey morning here in the Netherlands. And what I'd like to share with you this morning is essentially that if you like, there's a patchwork quilt of access and how that intersects with copyright and digital images of public domain images in museums all around the world, all over Europe, and certainly within the UK as well. So this is a miniature case study. If you remember anything from these few minutes, then this is the kind of key takeaway. I'd say that particularly from a user perspective, which is where I come at it from, rather than a practitioner, I think museum copyright is very, very confusing. It's pretty messed up. It's very inconsistent, and it's hard to pass if you're, a general citizen rather than one of the peers in this group working with heritage, copyright, libraries, and so on. So I'm going to illustrate this and point towards hopefully a way of resolving this to some extent. So in 1888, Vincent van Gogh, I think he probably had some kind of seasonal affective disorder. He really felt like he needed sunlight and needed to leave a gloomy northern France, Paris specifically. And he had the idea of moving down to the south of France, to Arles, for more light, heat, and sunshine. And in his time there, he moved into, some of you I'm sure know, what he called the Yellow House. And the whole idea was to have a miniature artist colony where he and fellow artists such as Paul Gauguin could visit and work together in the sun in the south of France, and preferably outdoors when it wasn't too windy. And in this very, very productive and brilliant period of Van Gogh's life, the painting sunflowers was a key motif of that period. So much so that when he wrote to his brother Theo, who was still in Paris, he talked about making the sunflower almost like as his own motif, something that was very special and distinct for Van Gogh. And this is how he phrased it in a letter on the 21st of January, 1889. He was saying that Other artists have flowers, like the Gardner Coast has the hollyhock, the artist Jeannin has the peony, Gauguin is the master of the camellia and the bougainvillea. But for me, like I have taken the sunflower, like I've made it mine. And here is Van Gogh painting sunflowers in and around the Yellow House, painted by Gauguin, that's in Amsterdam in the Van Gogh Museum in 1888. So, to examine copyright and the status of digitized images online today, okay, let's look at where sunflower pictures by Van Gogh have ended up in museum collections. And there are 8 major pictures all around the world, which are shown here. So you have some in the Netherlands, some in Germany, Switzerland, the US, the UK, National Gallery, Philadelphia Museum of Art in the States, the Sompo Museum of Art, which is in Tokyo in Japan, and the mothership, if you like, the Van Gogh Museum here in the Netherlands in Amsterdam. So this is a useful sample set to examine copyright and licensing practice of digital surrogates, so digitized facsimiles, if you like, of these out of copyright works. So we might ask ourselves, and you can ask yourself now, what is the copyright status of these images today? Are they free to use? Are there some restrictions in the reuse of them? Are they charged for, or are they completely free? Well, let's find out. I've done the research. Now, when we evaluate this question, one of the key aspects, of course, of copyright law in the UK and here in the EU is that there's this notion of originality. There's a threshold where in the current state of law in the EU, and recent case law supports this, is that the digital surrogate, the representation, the scanned or photographed image of a public domain work really has to have clear traces of the digitizer, the person's own human intellectual expression. And if that isn't the case, if that's not visible and evident in the digitized image, then copyright cannot be asserted. So that's a broad principle. So thinking about these 8 pictures and putting ourselves here in the shoes, in this meme, like what are the differences? What's special and original about the way that these images have been digitized? And here's what the museums say in an answer to this question. Well, the museum in Munich, the Pinakotheken, does assert copyright over its very beautiful sunflowers, and it applies the share-alike, the attribution license, CC by SA, to its digital images. Kröller-Müller here in the Netherlands, they claim copyright. Kunstmuseum Bern in Switzerland says there's no copyright. The Met in New York uses the CC0 waiver of any rights that it might have in its digital image. The National Gallery in London says, yeah, it's in copyright, and they are using pretty much the most restrictive Creative Commons license to its digital images, so non-commercial use, no derivatives. Philadelphia Museum of Art says, well, this is public domain, the original is public domain, our digital facsimile is public domain, and there's high resolution images that you can download and reuse freely from its website. I contacted the Sompo Museum of Art in Tokyo and had long correspondence with them this summer, and they essentially refused to say whether their image is in copyright or not. So that's the reason for the question mark. And the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, which is the biggest collection of the artist's works, is governed by the estate or the trust of the artist still today, they assert copyright in their image, which is interesting. Now, before we go further into that, it's always worth remembering that as a user, as someone accessing these images online, either on these museums' websites or sometimes through aggregation platforms like European or perhaps Media Commons, that there's the copyright status of the works, but then there is also this layer of contract law, most commonly expressed in terms and conditions of the website or terms of use. So what we see very frequently online now is that even in circumstances where the museum says, well, look, there is really no copyright in our digital image of a public domain work, their website still uses contract law and applies like quite a restrictive terms of use, so that's a way of restricting and controlling downstream reuse of those very images. So the public domain is still being if you like, suppressed or enclosed to some extent by contract law. It's not just about copyright. And taking this sample, this is what it looks like in practice. So even though the Kunstmuseum Bern, for example, says, well, there's no copyright in the image, their contract law, their terms and conditions say, well, you must contact us in order to obtain a license to reuse this particular work. And this is really the patchwork that I'm talking about. I think this is a reflective and reasonable sample, actually, of much wider practice of what we see in this space, in the sector, is that there's this pretty confusing mix of copyright assertion or not, completely open and free access, often, in fact, mostly not, or somewhere in between. So it's a very mixed picture. So briefly to touch on relevant law here in the Netherlands and in the European Union, some of you will be very familiar with the Directive on Copyright in the Digital Single Market from 2019, and particularly Article 14, which stated that essentially when a work of visual art, and that wording is quite key, has expired from any protection that it might have had, the resulting reproduction and digital reproduction in our case here is not subject to copyright or any other related rights unless that digital output, that surrogate, is original in the sense that it's the artist's own intellectual creation, as I said before. So it has to be really, really obvious that in the digital surrogate that something's kind of different, unusual, personal, distinctive. If that's not detectable, then the image is not subject to copyright. That's the basic principle. And the directive was quite slowly and late, but it was eventually transposed into national law all across the member states of the EU over the following 3 to 4 years, post 2019. And the Dutch actually here said, well, we don't even need to transpose Article 14 because it already accorded with Dutch law. So, okay, it's kind of fine as we are. So I wrote to the Van Gogh Museum back in February, and I said, look, what is the copyright position here? Are you claiming copyright, and why? For what reasons? And this is what they said. Said, look, in our opinion, the images we offer on our website do comply with the criteria originality because this is their justification. The photographer had to make creative decisions about lighting, controlling shutter speed, exposure, positioning the camera and the equipment, and so on. And that really is not something which stands up in Dutch law or in European law and recent case law here in the EU and elsewhere. So it leads you to think that the assertion of copyright and policy around this is still to some extent a kind of an optional position that museums are free to take. And that optionality, that kind of freedom to do that, is delimiting proper access to the public domain. And if we look globally, and I'm the co-author of the Open Glam survey with Dr. Andrea Wallace, we'll say that even within open access institutions, of which there are over 1,700 all over the world, even in that space, like that long list, there are only just over 100, so a small proportion of institutions which fully comply with the national and relevant copyright law where they are based. So the compliance with relevant law and also the application of contract law to kind of delimit access to the public domain, I'm suggesting here is a known and a significant problem pattern when it comes to access and free reuse of public domain content. So to finish,
Doug, I was just okay. I think you're on to finish. We were just going to hurry you along to make sure we get through everyone. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
On you go.
So to finish up, I think as copyright practitioners, as people working with library, archive, museum content, we perhaps may feel like Vincent did when he wrote to his brother in 1883, and he said, well, making headway with this is kind of a miner's labor that doesn't go as quickly as one would wish and others expect. And you're faced with that labor, the first things that one must hang on to are kind of patience and faith. And as someone who's been working in this space for a while, it's very much a sentiment that I share. #copyright. So I thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
Oh, Doug, thank you so much. Fantastic as ever.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. So what we're going to do is we're going to move straight on to our next presenter. We're going to have an opportunity for questions right at the end for everyone. What we would encourage you to do is if you do have any questions or comments, put them in the chat. Doug will be able to, or the other speakers will be able to respond to them in the chat, but we'll pick up at the end depending on how much time we have left. So we're going to go over to Anna. I'm going to go back to the 7-minute lightning talk timer just to make sure that we get through everybody. So Anna, are you ready to go?
I am ready. Thanks
Brilliant.
for being
Thank you
here,
so
everyone.
much.
Good
Okay,
morning.
over to you.
So I'm going to talk about Copyright X Libraries. It is a 12-week course on copyright law designed for people who work at libraries, archives, and museums around the world. It's part of a larger network of Copyright X courses organized by Terry Fisher and Ruth Okedici at Harvard Law School. Our students watch lecture videos prepared at Harvard, and they read legal decisions, statutes, and other material that we choose. We meet weekly for 90-minute seminars with approximately 25 participants. One of those seminars is taught by me and the other one by my colleague, Katie Zimmerman. These are real-time seminars taking place online via video conference. The foundation for the course is US law, but our goal is to understand the international copyright system and the major themes in comparative copyright law, as well as to create community among library workers across national borders. So it's not just because of community that this talk fits with the theme for Icepops this year, it also fits with the theme of joy. And that might not be your first association with a 12-week long course that's like the ones that are taught to law students. But my claim to you is that this course is fun. It's fun to take a long form educational venture into copyright law, and it's a type of fun that you might not have experienced in a while. It's often only available to people who are pursuing degrees, but Copyright X Libraries makes that kind of fun available to any library, archive, or museum worker, and it's free of charge. So in our class, we have something for everyone. We have role playing. Maybe you like to act. You want to take on the role of a party in a dispute, or you want to negotiate with the other side, or you want to be an advocate, or you want to be the judge or the jury or the legislator. You want to craft a better copyright system. We have case studies that enable you to take on all of those different personas. And so if you like to act or you like to imagine yourself in another role, we have something fun for you. We also have something for people who like math. What does it cost to litigate a copyright case? What do you stand to gain or lose at the end? What's the probability that you're going to win? How does the expected value of litigation for you match up with its value for the other party? Should you try to settle the dispute out of court? A key insight here is that you should almost always try to settle the dispute out of court, because then you don't have to pay the lawyers, and you can either keep that money or give some of it to the other party to get them to stop suing you. Another thing that we talk about is history, how copyright law has changed over time. One theme is the expansion of subject matter covered by copyright. The Statute of Anne talked about books. 80 years later, the first US Copyright Act talked about books, maps, and charts. Lately, I've spent a lot of time with a 19th century case from the United States involving a photograph of Oscar Wilde taken by the photographer Napoleon Cerrone. And the question is whether a photograph can represent original intellectual contributions of the author, or if it necessarily lacks originality because it's produced by a machine. Arguments about the copyrightability of works that are created with the help of artificial intelligence cover similar ground, so it's very interesting to revisit some of these historical cases. We spend a quarter of our course on theory, talking about the theories that motivate copyright law around the world. We have a week on personality theory and fairness theory. We talk about John Locke and his critics. We talk about the theories underlying moral rights. We spend a week on the utilitarian justification for copyright, which is the primary language we use for copyright policy in the US. And we spend a week toward the end of the course on cultural theory, which incorporates arguments from many contemporary scholars and sort of is a combination of these other theories. That theoretical content really sets Copyright X apart. I'm not aware of other educational opportunities for library workers that include that much theory, that I think it's actually quite valuable to us, especially if we want to advocate for changes to copyright law or we want to understand copyright law across borders. So we have something for everyone, and we build a very strong community over our 12 weeks together. That community outlasts the course, and it also gives us a sort of a shared vocabulary for talking about copyright law and talking about our work. The biggest challenge that we face is demand. Last year, we received about 300 applications and only had places for about 1 out of 5 of them. That was for the 8th year of operating Copyright X libraries. And we hope to keep teaching it for long enough that everyone who wants to take it gets a chance. If you've applied in the past and not gotten in, please apply again. I know there's also at least a few people here who have taken it already. So we're hoping this year to expand capacity. I think, fingers crossed, we will have a 3rd teacher joining us. We will offer the course again beginning in early February of 2026, and the application will open later this month. So in a minute, I'll put these links in the chat so that you can be notified if you would like when the application becomes available.
Oh, thank you so much, Anna. That was fantastic. Look,
Yeah,
I've
brilliant.
still got some time
Thank you, Anna.
on the timer. As you can see, I've rigged up the timer thing here, but brilliant. And just to say, we don't want to create too many expectations, but we have been talking, haven't we, Anna, about the potential for some UK collaboration. And we'll come back to this in a moment, but you come from a US perspective, but I know that there is a sort of global thing on Copyright X libraries, but the more we can do to collaborate, the better. Thank you so much. As ever, questions in the chat, but we're now going to move on to Megan, and I'm going to see whether or not I can actually get us set up with this device here, which is does it look like it's in mirror? Okay, right, I'm going to stop mucking about now. And I'll hand over to Megan to talk to us about navigating the different copyright spaces. Over to you.
Hi, hopefully everyone can see my screen. I think I've shared it correctly. So, hi, I'm Megan. I'm the Copyright and Scholarly Communications Librarian. I've had a slight tweak to my job title name, so the slides are slightly different. I used to be Copyright Licensing and Research Support, and now I'm Copyright Scholarly Communications. And I'm based at York St John University, and I'm going to be talking about what I call the different copyright spaces and the different identities of being a copyright librarian. And I'm going to draw on the experiences and some emotional responses I've had through the development of my role so far. So just a brief outline of my role. So I started as a trainee in May 2023, and I did that for a year. I am the sole advisor for all copyright matters at my institution. So I work across all copyright areas. So this includes compliance checking of teaching materials, performances and screenings, licenses there, permission seeking for research, open licensing support, contract negotiations, to help authors get a better understanding of copyright and copyright in their publications to get a better deal. Hopefully my screen is going to move on. There we go. Right. So I've just outlined the key, what I see as the main copyright spaces. So there's the teaching space and there's the research space. So I see it as, well, there's actually 3 main spaces. There's also should be an other as well, which I would probably put in kind of performances or film screenings that is outside of the educational kind of rules and research. But for the purposes of this, I'll just talk about teaching and research. So I see the teaching space as the traditional copyright space. It's more of a protective space for educational matters, but it's also more legal, and in some cases can be seen as more of a restrictive space. So it's great that we have education exceptions and privileges, but obviously it's capped and dependent on, percentages, either 5 or 10%. So it's essentially more daunting in trying to action the correct copyright function when you're faced with queries or looking what to do with a resource. So the research space is an ever-growing space. It has lots of subspaces within it. So again, permission seeking, clearance, publishing, copyright transfers, and the open research space. It has a variety of perceptions to it. So while permission seeking is noted, this could be permission seeking by a user of a work or also as a creator of a work, and setting certain terms and permissions for your own work. So it's a space that has many dynamics, and can benefit both users and creators depending on the copyright license. So some challenges that I've kind of encountered is, well, I've noted them on screen. So the first point is that the different spaces have different rules and risk levels, and so do individual resources for teaching. So my first task as a trainee was focused within the teaching space, and this was to do a VLE audit. And the point was to kind of encourage behaviour shift with academics and best practice for using kind of teaching materials. And I had a self-expectation that I needed to learn everything quickly, and I found the project was embedded with pushback and confusion by myself and academics. So I had academics tell me that they've always done it in a certain way. Why do I need to change it? It's never been a problem, or that they're aware of copyright and I do own the copyright, so I can do what I want with it. So there was that message of, no, actually, that is not the case. You need to change that. And my reactions and emotional responses was that I kind of felt ignorant, wrong and inferior at times, talking to academics, and kind of thinking, well, they've been doing this for so long, they must know more than me, which again, is not the case once you get into it with copyright. And another experience was in the research space. So an academic was publishing an open access data set, and it wasn't linked to a research output, but they wanted to use it in the future to build on research. And this query was going on for over a month for different stages of the publication. And I found myself getting the same questions constantly, and the academic seeking justification, kind of asking, are you sure about this? Someone else told me this. Are you sure? You said it was different in when I was teaching, but now you're saying this is okay. And for me, I kind of felt a bit overwhelmed by this and not knowing how to kind of react and answer questions when you're faced with something that you think needs an urgent answer. And I've also felt ignored in one space, but also directly contacted in the other. So one academic won't take down non-compliant content on a reading list, but that same academic will actually come to me to ask for copyright advice for his publication. So it's a question of, well, what's my identity? How do people actually perceive me? Am I good? Am I bad? And what is kind of the value of copyright and what people actually, think of it and want to use it. Just looking at the time. So yeah, it's just some key reflections now. So every copyright query is unique. It might not fit in one space. It might overlap and extend into one space to the other. As copyright specialists, we have to work with the guidance and provide answers to all situations, but there's also opportunities to tailor and provide alternatives. So an example of this is when I'm doing contract reviewing and negotiations, and I can provide advice to creators to secure kind of certain terms, to use sections of their research for teaching. But as a result of the different options and spaces, there's always going to be emotional responses, and they're always going to be kind of sparked and more striking. And as these emotions are coming through on both sides, it's kind of made me realise that both as a copyright specialist and for users, it bounces off one another, like we're all kind of navigating the same space. So we just need to take the time and to learn and understand from each other and kind of explore how to move forward. And then I'll just put the actions and recommendations on screen too. So essentially just to be visible and continue to offer teaching and to continue conversations around copyright.
Oh,
Perfect.
Look
Wow.
at that, Megan. That was quite something to the second.
I'm
That
well
was
impressed by
brilliant.
that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's making me think about a number of things we're doing in our copyright anxiety research. Definitely some important things that we're seeing as well. So thank you so much. Right, we're going to move on to Diane now. If you're able to share your screen and take it away. I've reset the timer.
And we do have your
found a way-
slides if there's a problem, Diane. So
Yeah. Are you all right there, Diane? Are you able to share? Are you able
she's
to
not
unmute?
unmuted. Are you able to
No.
unmute, Diane?
Yes, I have now. Sorry, I was just explaining that
there
I'm doing
you
it
are.
from my laptop at home, so I've got limited tech. And I think once I share, I won't be able to see you necessarily. So maybe once
Okay.
I share, if I could have a verbal yes
I
that
will
you
give
can.
you. I'll give you. Yeah, I will let you know that we can see it, and if you can't see the timer, I will give you a 3-minute and a 1-minute warning.
I think this is okay. I'll just. Sorry, just moving to my. Okay. Oh,
Yeah, that's perfect. We can see your
That's
slides.
okay. Brilliant. Okay.
Okay, take it away. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. So today I just want to talk to you about our copyright toolkit, which is a SharePoint site that takes a scenarios-based approach to providing copyright guidance to our users. And throughout the presentation, I'm going to be using some of my own models, which is good from a copyright perspective, and I also don't need to get these particular models to sign a release form, so that's good. And these models don't actually appear in the toolkit themselves, but just used throughout this presentation. So my name is Diane, I'm copyright librarian at the University of Exeter, and that's a kind of full-time role. That's all I do is deal with copyright issues. So the slide you're seeing now shows what the front page of the toolkit looks like. Previously, we had a set of LibGuides. We had 3 different ones, one aimed at lecturers, one at researchers, and one at students. And in the summer of 2023, I created this toolkit. So it's a SharePoint communication site, and these are designed to inform and engage people in a visually compelling way. So it's all based around this very prominent copyright and new section in the center there. And we wanted the information to be really targeted to our users. But you'll see alongside that, there's a section on copyright licenses and UK copyright law to provide that contextual information. I also provide a news feed. This is an old screenshot, so the news feed is a little dated, but I keep that up to date with 1 or 2 news stories a week. So we want to take people as our starting point, and you can see a group of our undergraduates here working in the library. So we wanted to create a resource that was really relevant and focused for our users and which could provide them with the required information at the point of need. We wanted to give each user group a pathway through the information together with a search facility. We wanted to provide really comprehensive information, but because, as we all know, it's a fairly dry topic, or it can be, we didn't want to add it to that list of mandatory training courses so that everybody kind of went, oh no, copyright training time again. So what's included in the toolkit? We've got bite-sized scenarios when you drill down into it based around the kind of activity that's carried out within the university. So, and then within those bite-sized chunks are links to relevant and more detailed contextual information about the licensing and legal framework. And we feel that this approach helps us to highlight the key areas that our staff and students need to know, while still providing the more comprehensive contextual detail, which keeps our legal services team happy. And that's a couple of our top postgraduates you can see working in the library there. So here is an example of some of our groups, and as well as the lecturer, research, postgrad and professional services, we've got a group for undergraduates, taught postgrads and researchers. We'll just have a little look at some of the examples. So you'll see here some of the scenarios or activities that are dealt with within the toolkit. I'm not going to linger too long on these ones because I didn't actually include these next 2 slides on the day because Chris and Jane were very strict about our timing. But there they are. There's our lecturer and some of the things that they might be doing. Let's just talk a bit about the postgraduate researcher. So here are some of her scenarios. Oh, I should apologise for the gender bias of my dolls as well. There is a male doll coming up. So here are some of the things that they might be looking for information on. And the last one in that list, involved in a collaborative research project, is one that I added more recently when the CLA license changed to bring that in. And that's just to say that the structure of the toolkit is really accommodating of new content, and it enables us to respond in a really timely way when new information is necessary without it becoming too cumbersome and unwieldy a document.
3 minutes left, Diane.
Right, okay, there's our professional services. I won't linger, but there's some of the scenarios that might be relevant for PS staff. So what are some of the benefits of this? And here's our researcher working from home in his kitchen today, just as I am. So we found that it kind of greatly enhanced the guidance, and it presented it in a really visually engaging way. The targeted approach makes the information provided more relevant to the user. And while it took a bit of time to set up initially, after this initial time investment, it's sort of time saving when it comes to handling inquiries. The more basic stuff can be dealt with by my colleagues. And even myself, I used it yesterday when I was dealing with a more complex inquiry, because I've got that kind of bank of information there. I can copy and paste and link to it. So that's been really useful. It's got useful features as well in terms of it being SharePoint. It's mobile friendly. There are some analytics we can look at in terms of stats and everything. I like the news feed. I use that really frequently. And there is an element of interactivity if you want to switch comments on and things like that. When I spoke about the toolkit at the CoOLSIG Copyright Conference as well, and at that point I said one of the things I wanted to do in the future was to create a Viva Engage community, and I have subsequently done that. And the idea, my vain hope, is to get people within the university talking to each other about copyright a bit more, providing a kind of informal network for them to speak. So we have got a few members. It's mostly me talking at the moment. I have to say I was quite excited to get a bit of engagement on one of my posts yesterday. So it is very early days, but that's my goal. So thanks very much for listening. Those are my contact details, copyright@exeter.ac.uk if anyone's got any questions. And you can see my models on Instagram if you want to see more. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Diane.
Thank you so
perfect
much
timing
again.
as well.
And within time, yeah. Under time,
I'm
brilliant, thank you.
Unshare.
Okay, we can, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to share the next presentation, which is from Sarah Brear. So I think I just need to, if I play this, could I check that the sound is working?
Yeah, go for it, Chris.
Could you hear Sarah's voice then?
No.
Okay, right, let me reshare then. Stop sharing. I will get the share up and running. Share sound. Tick that box. Here we go.
Hello everyone,
Yes,
and welcome to
perfect,
this lightning
working.
session where I'm going to whiz through how CLA and the HE sector has worked together over the years, how that relationship has changed and developed, and what the outputs have been. I'll also be making a few general observations along the way that might be helpful to bear in mind across a range of wider scenarios. This is a reinvigorated version of a talk originally given at Icepops in September, and I'm very pleased to deliver it now, with thanks to Chris and Jane for their kind invitation. I don't want to dwell on the past, but let's just go back a few years, quite a few years. So here am I, or maybe it's Jane, pondering the state of things in days gone by. If you've been present in certain meetings back in 2008, as I was, recently catapulted into the world of collective licensing, you could be forgiven for thinking that the signs didn't look great. But this was immediately preceding a fresh way of working, we were really fortunate to have some great people involved across a range of roles, people who were prepared to take that leap of faith into a new future. And here's my first observation. As a general point, conflicting ideas of themselves are not necessarily a bad thing. And sometimes they can even be a good thing. As we know, standing by your values is so important. Conflict doesn't always have to follow those ideas around. And when it does, what's key is how that conflict is managed, knowing what a constructive dialogue looks like, and finding common ground. And then very interesting things start happening. We've come a long way. None of this would have been possible without developing relationships and conversations at a couple of levels. So first of all, with CNEC, our negotiating partners, who also consult widely with the sector, and then directly with the sector itself. So, for example, via focus groups, account meetings, and also day-to-day conversations. Issues have been better identified and addressed as a result. New rights and products developed and new repertoire secured. And conversely, in some cases, things have been dropped from the license. And all this wouldn't have been possible without a huge amount of inspiring and brave dialogue. To hone in on a few of the highlights, the DCS, Digital Content Store, has had a huge impact, both in terms of facilitating more use of the license and also streamlining workflows. And we're so grateful, firstly, to our 5 development partners from the sector, and then to everyone else who has joined us in this initiative. You've all been so open and constructive with your feedback and continue to be so. And without you, we definitely wouldn't have been able to develop this product in a way that benefits us all. The overseas campus-based option within the licence was introduced following a long pilot and then some fantastic case studies to help secure it from 2019. And then the current licence introduced both the increased extent limit for journals and also the option to share content with other HEIs under a collaborative research provision. And our site forum, which has its own history and which has become an annual fixture, the next one is this December, with a dedicated committee who help to shape its content. And that content ranges from CLA specific issues to wider topics of interest. Some of the themes I've noticed are set out here, and you'll see I've highlighted inspiration. So at CLA, we're constantly inspired by our HE customers, as well as our rights holders, and also empathy, respect, trust, collaboration, and integrity. And these are themes that I've certainly incorporated more in much wider scenarios. I imagine that may ring true for many of you too, but it's definitely something worth mentioning. A couple of great quotes here, and the second in particular is one that I really love. You can read more about CLA's vision, mission and values on our website, but in the context of this presentation, these are what I wanted to highlight. They are our CLA values. We find solutions particularly relevant here. And within CLA, we've had increased agility. So we've got increased agility in cross-organisational work, and that's been incredibly helpful. So a few observations on themes that have been recurring and or developing along the way with what are definitely shared values. And I'm thinking particularly of student experience. Probably the overriding factor that unites us all is getting to a place where students ultimately benefit. So thanks for listening, and in the spirit of this presentation, we'd love to hear from you. In case you're new and perhaps haven't been in touch with us before, whether it's an administrative query, a product suggestion, comments on a newsletter, please don't hesitate. You can contact me directly, or we have dedicated mailboxes which you can find on our website. So thanks again, and I hope you found the session interesting. We did deal with various questions back at the September event, but do feel free to reach out at any time. And then finally, and as a general point, please don't worry if your question or comment might seem inconsequential. To quote from a book on problem-based learning that I recently engaged with, if it's on your mind, it probably affects us all in some way. But everyone has their own story, so let's keep talking. Thank you.
Great.
Brilliant.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for sharing that one. And
No worries.
we've come in with some time for questions as well.
We
So we
do,
have
yeah.
4 of our speakers with us. Thank you to all of you for speaking at Icepops, but also for agreeing to come back and talk now. We've got a little bit of time if anyone would like to ask questions of any of our speakers. So the floor is yours. I can see so far just some comments and things in chat, but a lot of love for your Cindy's there.
Yes,
Diane?
may I make a comment rather than a question? My comment is obviously how fantastic it was to hear those presentations again. It was also, and I hope I'm not talking out of place, I feel like we want to follow up on each and every single one of them and to do more with that. So we would like to have an open invitation to all our speakers to return once we've kind of talked through how we might structure that. In my mind, I'm thinking museums and copyright isn't going to go away. It would be really interesting to see how we think about that, and certainly something I'm looking at within my own institution, how we educate ourselves on understanding how to deal with copyright questions. Clearly that's what Anna's talking about, and Megan as well, in terms of her own experiences. How do we provide really good copyright support to our colleagues? Is it a separate conversation, or is it all part of the same thing? Absolutely. And then when it comes to the CLA license, we had the Universities UK Copyright Negotiation Advisory Committee had a meeting this week with CLA, and we are now planning for the new HE license negotiations, which start from 2027. So there will be in the new year an engagement from the CNAC to the sector to say, what do you want in the new license? And I'm sure you won't be surprised that AI is hanging around that conversation. So there's going to be a really interesting time to cover up or to follow up on all those things. I'm not sure I can see any questions in the chat. I wondered whether any of our speakers wanted to say, is there anything else that you wanted to say in your presentation, or it's just occurred to you after hearing the others that you would like to add to what you already said? No, everyone's done their thing. Please. Diane, you have your hand up.
Not in relation to mine actually, but it's a lot of what Megan was saying was just really ringing true with me today, because I've been out talking to academics about Gen AI and copyright this week, and some of the reactions were kind of quite surprising to me, like absolutely horrified to hear that they can't upload copyright articles into a Gen AI. Fancy that. But it was just that whole thing you were saying, Megan, about, you know, that you start to question yourself a bit, you know, when you get those kinds of responses. And I just wanted to say that really kind of spoke to me today.
I can see we've got a question from Liesl asking Anna if you could just say a bit more about how somebody would go about applying for Copyright X.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to open the application maybe even later this week. Well, I guess it's next week at this point, but anyway, soon. And what we're really trying to figure out from the application is whether the person is going to be able and willing to follow through with the course to the end. Because as I said, spots are limited. So we'll ask you why copyright is relevant to your work, and you know why you're interested in the course. Basically, it's not a hard application to fill out, but if you have any questions about it, or if you want to talk to me about the course, I'm eager to talk to folks. Especially, I think most of the people in this webinar are not from the US, and I'm actually on sabbatical at the moment from my regular job and focusing on Copyright X, and especially on the international collaboration elements of it. So if you're interested in talking about the course, I would be happy to do that either before you apply or at any other point.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Anna. So yes, please do get in touch with Anna if you're interested in this, and we encourage you to do so. As I said, we are going to have some conversations about how we might collaborate more closely with the UK copyright community. So I've just put a link in the chat to a CLA document, and there was a question here about the CLA collaborative research sharing provision. Another recommendation from Doug on Copyright X. Excellent. If that doesn't, going back to the CLA thing, if that doesn't answer the question, you can get in touch with either CLA or CNAC if there are things where you are feeling like, but hang on, there's something here that you'd like to get into in more detail. Okay, thanks, Anna, for sharing your email address. I think we are now at time. So I think we will use this as an opportunity to draw the conversation to a close. That was brilliant as expected. Thank you
Yeah,
to all
thanks
of our
everybody.
speakers for agreeing to take part. And when it comes to what happens next on the webinars, I think, as I said, we will definitely be looking to pick up on those topics. But for now, we are looking at, is this actually worked? No, that's shared my whole screen. Right, let's try again.
You're doing
there
well this
we
morning.
go. It's fine. So
Christmas
is
special.
just around the corner, isn't it? You know, here we go. So our fabulous CoOLSIG secretary, Catherine Drum, who is also the star of BBC TV quiz shows, who's going to be our quiz master again. So Friday, 19th of December, at the normal time of 11 a.m. I believe we are going to be
all booked
back
in.
our normal
Yes.
slot.
Yes.
So that is
yes.
fantastic. We're really looking forward to that. We'll dig out the
Yes, so if
Christmas
you're still
hats.
if you're hanging around till the bitter end before the vacation, then please join us on that Friday for some fun and merriment, and probably see the little elf.
Christmas elf will be out again.
Yes, maybe.
Okay, well,
so we've just got
there's
one last thing, I think. It's
Time for just
1:30.
one last thing. Well, there's actually two last things on there.
There are two
I
last
think.
things.
Well, I'll go first just to say that this, if you are around in the area of East Kent,
There's a lot happening.
There's a lot
Saturday.
happening, isn't there? The fabulous band Snooze You Lose, folk rock rhythm and blues with a country twang, are playing at the White Horse Inn in Chilham. But that's not the only thing happening, is it?
Not the only thing that's happening. No, this is just I think people know my love of role play and dressing up, and I'm one of the organisers of a Regency Ball, which is happening tomorrow evening. So I have been busy sewing away and with a friend's help making a dress, and we're having a evening to celebrate all things Jane Austen with music and dancing. So I'm very excited about that. So it's just, and obviously if you are in East Kent, we've got links there, so you would be able to come along. There are still a few tickets left for the ball. But that's it from us. We will see you on the 19th of December. Just remains to thank our wonderful speakers for this recap of the highlights of Icepops, and we hope to see you all again soon. We hope to see some of you at our webinar in December. But thanks very much. Round of applause for the speakers, and yay.
And I've just seen a comment there from David Sharon. This is the last copyright webinar before you retire next month.
Oh, well, all the best, David. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for being part of the community and for putting up with us and our nonsense, and hope you have a fantastic time.
Yes, absolutely. Very happy retirement. So well done. Thank you, Liesl, for your nice comments as well. Yes. Spent quite a lot of time sewing recently.
Oh, very good. And I've spent quite a lot of time restringing my guitar as well, but no one seems to be, it's not quite the same, is it? Like I've restrung my lap steel to be in C6 tuning so I can play in the Hank Williams honky tonk style. But
fantastic.
You know, anyway,
fantastic.
We will see. It'll be a lovely whatever. Okay, right. Everybody is free to go now.
Yeah,
you don't have to hang around any longer.
Is that all right, speakers? Anna, Doug, Diane, Megan, thank you very much. It was great. And it was really nice to see you again. Okay.
We'll wait here until the last person leaves. We just make sure. And we're going to tidy up all the crisp packets and the empty cans.
Yeah. Hi, John. Bye, John. Okay. I think we can leave. I think our work is done.
Let's go. We'll go to a different platform and continue our never-ending conversation about copyright.